Everybody, welcome to the Building Excellence podcast. I have got Michael Freeman, actually, with me today. Thanks for being here, Mike.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So for those that don't know about Big Mike, right? You were obviously a baseball player in college, Oklahoma State, and had a really good story. But I've known you for a long time, and we really want to dive into kind of your early years, upbringing, and what that was like.
Yeah, so obviously we met in high school there, freshman math, I think, and you were my first friend when I got to Bishop Kelly, honestly, and now at this point, like you're my longest friend that I've really stayed close with, and my best friend. So start with that, like really happy to have your friendship, and
Because
it's been a huge blessing in my life. But yeah, I grew up in Broken Arrow. I've got a big family. My parents each had two kids prior to getting married to each other, and then had two more. So I have five siblings. Now I have, uh, I mean, we have a large family. I've got a couple kids. My sister's got three kids. Uh, and then we got a lot of dogs and everything. Our family get-togethers. It is a packed house, man. But yeah, grew up in Broken Arrow. Went to Broken Arrow my whole life. Ended up going to Bishop Kelly for high school. Played football and baseball, and ended up just playing baseball junior and senior year. Went to Eastern Oklahoma State College and played baseball there for 3 years. I redshirted my first year, and then ended up going to Oklahoma State, which whenever I was in the middle of being of my career, my tenure at Eastern, you don't think that it's, sometimes it feels like it's just unattainable. Like that's the big leagues basically. And so I ended up at Oklahoma State, and it was just a huge blessing. And that in itself was a God thing. Uh, and things just lined up perfectly. But uh, then ended up getting to go play with the Astros for a couple of years, and finish my baseball career playing some independent league baseball.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, when we first met in math class, you were the one we met because you were looking off, my answers, basically copying
Yeah,
my stuff, right?
basically, you're the reason I graduated high school.
That's
Basically,
right.
yeah.
Just kidding. But you said you had a big family. You got a younger brother, and you got some older siblings as well. Was competition something that was important growing up with you guys, or what was that like?
Not so much. My oldest sister is 13 years older than me, so we're pretty spread out, and so it's 13, 11, and almost 10 years difference, uh, or 9 years. Sorry, so
There's the math right
somewhere in
there.
there. Yeah, obviously math whiz. And then my brother's 3.5 years younger than me, so our brothers were the same age too, which kind of lined up perfectly for us. But um, yeah, not so much. My parents weren't athletes. They didn't really play sports growing up, and but we were always encouraged to compete in athletics, or just be involved was really my parents' big thing. It wasn't necessarily that we had to go compete or had to go play a sport, or that they forced us to play sports, but we had to do something. It was stay busy and be involved, or I don't know, because that was never an option. I just always was. So um, yeah, I think competition was a big part of my life just because of what I did playing sports, but it wasn't necessarily a huge thing within our family unit.
Sure. And so playing different sports, when did you start doing that at a young age, or what was that like for you?
Yeah, played t-ball, and starting at like 4 years old, and little dribblers basketball. I don't know if you played little dribblers, but it was little dribblers. I can't even really say that. I'm getting tongue tied. And then I played a year of soccer, and that did not work out. That was not my deal. But uh, from 4 years old, I played baseball up until I retired, and always loved it. Oh, and baseball wasn't always the number one. For a long time, I remember the joke being like, "What's your favorite sport?" Well, it's baseball season, so it's baseball. It's football season, so it's football. It's basketball season, so it's basketball. And so I just always enjoyed doing it up until I didn't, and so that's what I enjoyed doing. That's what I spent a ton of time doing.
Yeah, and so you played all different types of sports, so you were able to, develop as an athlete in terms of playing football, playing soccer, doing basketball, working on hand-eye coordination, all these different things that you learn throughout playing different sports. Also working with teammates, and every sport has a little bit different intricacies, but you had the ability to go do that at a young age, and so you talked about really enjoying whatever sport that you were in at the moment.
Yeah.
Um, when did it become apparent that you wanted to strictly play baseball?
Uh, I don't think it wasn't necessarily so much strictly play baseball. Whenever I got to high school, I didn't want to. Baseball was bad at that point. You get into middle school, and baseball is my favorite. I liked playing basketball, but I was tall and super skinny and uncoordinated, and it was just like, man, that's probably not it. Even though I was tall, like I, the big guys are big guys, and I would have just got thrown around the court, honestly. So then I was like, well, I don't want to lose baseball season for basketball. So I just started, I dropped basketball and just played football and baseball. And then once I got to high school, I think my freshman year, I really enjoyed it still. But getting into my sophomore year, I got hurt that year. And then my sophomore year, I got hurt again. And it just kind of got to the point where I was like, man, whenever I don't enjoy the work for it. I don't enjoy the practice. I don't enjoy all the stuff that came along with it. Like the games are okay and it's fun, but I was very average anyways, and I was like, well, let's play fall baseball and let's really dive into this a little bit more, because that's ultimately what I decided I want to do. So I guess to answer your question, probably about sophomore year of high school is when I was like, let's just play baseball.
And you go from Broken Arrow to Bishop Kelly. Why did you make that transition?
Well, mainly it was academics, honestly. Going through it, I wasn't being pushed academically at Broken Arrow. Even taking pre-AP classes and stuff like that. I had a great group of friends. I had people that I'd grown up with since I was in probably kindergarten, that I was there with, and that I cared about and that cared about me. But it just came down to that was the choice that my parents brought to me, or the option my parents brought to me, and we decided we are going to do it. And man, it was leaps and bounds academically above where Broken Arrow was, and that's no knock on Broken Arrow. It's just resources and things like that, and smaller class sizes. And I got an incredible education at Bishop Kelly. But I do always joke that the irony of all that is then I went to junior college and redshirted. So I was in junior college for 3 years, and Bishop Kelly was absolutely harder than college,
Yeah.
which it shouldn't be. But I mean, I was prepared to go be successful probably anywhere that I could have gotten into in college, because of that education, and that I think that really helped me grow that way. It really pushed me. It made me work hard and not just get by academically. And I was always able to. I mean, I did my homework and I did, like, it wasn't a drag all the time. I didn't hate doing it, but there just wasn't things that just constantly pushed me. So that was a huge blessing for that my dad was willing to go work extra and uh, provide that education for me.
Yeah, and let's touch on that real quick. You have two great parents. You talked about your dad working extra to provide you an opportunity to go to a place that might be a little bit better academically and push you a little further than maybe the other opportunity was at Broken Arrow. What did you get to see and learn from your parents growing up that you admire today for what they did?
Man, my dad absolutely just working hard. That's probably the number one lesson I've learned from my dad is just work, and that's something that carried me through athletics. That carries that whether athletics, my marriage, anything. I think he really ingrained that in me as a person, just to work. And he's the hardest worker I know, and he would do anything for any of us to take care of us and never have a thought about it. And that's something about my dad that I really admire. It didn't matter, and he never missed he never missed things unless he was working to provide us to be able to do those things. So, and I that's one of those kind of the way your parents raise you really affects you how you treat your kids and those things, whether it's doing the good that your parents did or trying to overcome where you feel like your parents fell short, and he didn't get very much support in those extracurricular activities, and who knows where he would have been if he had that. And so from a young age with all of his kids, it was unwavering support for whatever we wanted to do, and to this day, whatever we want to do, he's got our back, and he'll take care of us in any way he can. So for my dad, I would say the biggest thing was probably just my dad taught me how to work, and my mom, uh, so many things. My mom and I spent a lot of time in the car going to mainly baseball tournaments, but athletics all the time, but mainly baseball tournaments whenever we got into high school. And I mean, we had a 2001 Suburban, and I don't know how many miles me and my mom put on that thing, driving literally all over the country, like up to Illinois to Chicago to play a tournament. Out to there was one trip. We were gone for about 2 weeks, and it was up to Chicago, over to Georgia, and back. And man, we spent a lot of time together. And so I think my mom's faith in God is probably the biggest thing that she has shown me and continues to show me with her life. No matter what's going on, it was that was the priority for her, and the importance of having a relationship with God. And my mom is a very, how calm my mom is, and just giving of grace, and so that's not necessarily my biggest strength. So that's something, whether mainly the giving of grace and those type of things. That's what my mom showed me, and continues to show me. And she, like, the way I describe my mom is like, if I tell people, what are your parents like? My mom is too nice. She is so nice that it'll make you angry that she's trying to do so much for you. And like, just relax, let's just hang out. Let me take care of you. But my mom always wants to be the one. Well, I don't want to inconvenience you by asking you to do something. It's like, well, I'll tell you no, mom. And she just, like, she always thinks about everybody first, in what she does. And so that just, I get, and from both of them, I guess ultimately what that comes down to is service. So just learning to take care of people, and that has obviously led me kind of to where I'm at now.
Yeah, and one of the things you get to sit there and see how impactful your parents were to you growing
Yeah.
up. But also, I think you pointed out a really good point is that sometimes it's the things that they do well that you carry over, but also maybe the things that if you didn't have good parents, like it's overcoming maybe some setbacks that people have. And thankfully you had some great parents, but
Yeah.
for many people it's all situational and just trying to better improve, the lives for your kids and help them become great people and be great servants too. So
Yeah.
that's really cool to hear. Going back into high school, you were traveling all over the country. You started honing on baseball. You were football, like we talked about before. And I was just
Mhm.
thinking just now, I had a good story. I remember one of the first times I think we were hanging out. I was a quarterback and you were a quarterback, and so we were in the backyard at my house, and we
Uh-huh.
just went out to throw the football. And so I thought, well, this will be pretty funny. We'll see what he thinks. So I grab the football and I start throwing it to you, but I grab it literally not like you would gripping a football, but just basically like just grabbing it when you're picking it up and
Yeah.
start throwing it, and it's a duck. I mean, it's a duck. And then you throw it back, and I throw it again, and then I finally lose it because I'm like,
Just lost it,
I
man.
lost it. Yes, this guy's thinking, oh man, man, if this is a quarterback, I'm definitely gonna be playing over here. So
Man, I had not thought about that in a long time. Yeah,
yeah,
that was.
it's a good memory. But anyway, going back to baseball, you're traveling around the country, spending a lot of time working on your craft. You started to go into your senior year. What was that like for you? Because you were pitching. I think at one point you were kind of moved to first base a little bit for a period of time. Um, and basically talk about your experience playing high school and then working into college, because it wasn't like you were some highly sought after college recruit from the big schools, right?
Yeah. So, um, everybody, and I think Rashad Wright kind of talked about the same type thing of, you expect to, when that first day they can call you, you expect to get calls. And so many people have been like, oh, you're 6'7" and left-handed. Everybody wants a 6'7" lefty. Like, you're going to be able to go wherever you want. And I didn't feel that way. But then so many people start telling you something as a 16, 17-year-old kid. You're like, oh, okay. I mean, maybe so. And so we're in the summer and I'm playing with a team that's, man, like, I think five of those guys went to Division I schools, and so it was the summer before they actually went to college. And I'm playing with them, and we're a really good team. And I was the worst player on that team, uh, and that was a situation where they made me better, like, considerably. And I had to play to their level, or I wouldn't have been playing. The other part of that is all the guys that pitched on that team are like 85 to 90 plus mile an hour arms. And I'm over here like 76, 78 miles an hour because I'm just a string bean trying to throw a baseball. And so everybody else at all these tournaments is throwing cheese because they're these good teams, and they've got these Division I arms. There's scouts all over the place, and then everybody goes from that to basically me throwing underhanded to them, and they can't slow down to it. And so I'm having a ton of success against these really good teams, and I'm like, man, I might get a chance. And so I think it's June 1. They're Division I schools are allowed to call in the summer before your junior year, and so I'm like, cool. I'm excited. That first day goes by, and I'm like, nobody calls. It's like the first few days, nobody calls. First week, month, nothing. Uh, and so I go to my coach and I'm like, hey, is this normal? Like, what's going on? Like, nobody, not even no junior colleges or anything. And he's like, man, to be honest with you, like, you're not going to be a guy that signs real early. Like, you're probably going to be a junior college guy, unless you start throwing harder, because guys, they don't want to recruit guys that are 2 to 3 years out from making an impact in their program. And so I was like, that was kind of a shot to my pride a little bit, just because I'm playing with all these guys and I feel like I'm keeping up with them, guys that are you play with a Matt Reynolds that's a big leaguer, and some other guys that are big time recruits, and playing against these guys and competing with them at all these tournaments that are draft picks, that are SEC, Big 12 uh, athletes are about to be, and feel like, hey, I can play with these guys. I should be getting recruited too. And so that was a bit of a struggle for me at first, because I was like, well, if nobody thinks I'm good enough, then why do I Like none of these schools want me. Then why am I working so hard? And to be honest with you, at that point, I wasn't working that hard. I felt like I was, but I didn't really know what that looked like. I didn't really know what it took, and so that was a point where I kind of had to decide, hey, I've really got to get after. I need to start working harder, and there's things I need to do to get better, to move to the next level. So I don't remember what your question really was, but that's kind of from high school moving into college. That's kind of what happened, and so what ended up happening, junior colleges basically get what's left, or they get those big. And I don't feel like it's happening as much anymore, just the way things have changed with the draft. But uh, those junior colleges get to come clean up those players that don't sign D1. And there's no sense in them recruiting early because junior college is so in and out and changes every 2 years. The landscape of it's so different. So I didn't even end up committing until spring break of my senior year. And here I am, the summer before my junior year, thinking, "Hey, I'm going to get recruited and sign." And so that was definitely a lesson in patience. And that kind of brings me to the point of my life has been uh, a whole lot of God humbling me. Uh, and so one thing I try to never say anymore at this point in my life is I would never, because every time I have said I would never, God has been like, watch this, bud. And I remember driving. They had the big 5A shootout in McAllister every year, the big 5A tournament for the whole state. And so all the 5A schools, at least the ones that are pretty good, and go there, and it's a big spring break ish time, and everybody's there, and you get to see, like, we didn't play Edmond, Deer Creek, we didn't play Carl Albert and stuff like that throughout the year, so that you get to see those schools. And so I remember we were at the shootout, and some of those games were played at Eastern, and so we're staying in McAllister, playing it at Eastern in Wilberton, driving out into what feel a kid from Tulsa who grew up in the city, or from Broken Arrow that grew up in the city, and driving out into Wilberton, Oklahoma, through all these winding roads and hills and just a bunch of trees, and like out into the great abyss of nothing. I remember being on the bus, turning around to someone and saying, I would never play here. I would never come out here and play baseball. And then I had a buddy my senior year. He was a freshman in college, and he got hurt and got redshirted. And I was like, if I got redshirted in junior college, I would quit. There's no way I would. And to me, that was just like the ultimate disgrace, is getting redshirted at junior college. Like, you're already having to go to junior college, which is, in my eyes, like, as a senior in high school, like the lowest of the low. And then you're told you're not good enough to play there, and you get redshirted. And so, then moving on into professional baseball, I would never play independent league baseball. I wouldn't. And I guess even before that, there was some other things that, but these are just kind of some highlights. But there have been several. It seems like every time I say I would never do this or I would never do that, God's like, I'm going to line it up so that that's what happens to you. Like, you need to understand that it's not what you want, it's what I have lined up for you. And so I try to never say that, because I try to never feel that thing of like, I would never, like, God put me where I need to be. And that's been my prayer for a long time. Whenever I felt all the movement of baseball, of, that the relationship with Delaney, my wife, of, that I feel like she's the one. Is this where we need to go, God? Like, or should we get engaged? Like, is this my wife? Like, put me where I need to be. Show me that place. Where should we live in the off season? Like, put me in the place to have the success, to build the relationships, to do what I need to do to take care of my family. Then at that point, and then moving through baseball, like, obviously everything, you always want to move up to the next level. And that's very humbling to pray that as well. Because I'm sitting there like, let's go, I'm freaking killing it. Put me in double A, put me in the big leagues. Let's go. Like I'm ready. And you start to kind of get back to that place. Like I shouldn't be here. I don't want to wait. But to humble yourself and pray to God and say, put me where I need to be, is a place where you find peace ultimately. And so that's something even now, like building a business or training dogs and learning those things. Like, what do I want to do with that? It's not my will; it's God's will in my life, and so those are the things that in my prayer life that I pray is put me where I need to be, show me where I need to go, show me how to do it, or not necessarily directly speaking to me, but put me in the place, show me the things, teach me the things so that I know what to do. So that is reactionary. Those things are reactionary. So, it's just been sports, baseball especially is humbling already. But then to add in the personal experience of this isn't something I want to do. Well, it really doesn't matter, because what's going to happen is what God wants to happen, what God has lined out for us. And so I've had to really set a lot of my somewhat selfish ideas, or just what I've decided is going to happen, isn't ultimately what matters.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a great point, but there's a lot to unpack in that. You know, when you started talking about just going back to, your high school experience, and you had people around you at the time that were able to actually tell you the truth, that kind of, maybe you had a little bit of a thought process behind where you were going to go and be. And then also maybe you felt like you were working hard, but you really weren't working hard enough to get to the level you wanted to be at. So you had people that were speaking a little bit of truth to you, even if it was hard to hear, which you had a little bit of humility to say, all right, they're probably right. I need to work a little harder. This is what I need to do. But still, going back to your story a little bit, you didn't have a ton of, high level offers or things like that. And you sit there and you're on the bus and saying, I would never go to junior college. I'd never redshirt. So, and then all of a sudden you're going to junior college, you're redshirting, but at the time too, I want to take people back is, if they got to watch you play, especially as of recently, you've changed a lot physically. You put in a lot of work to like get stronger and bigger, and you've also grown in your body. So at this time you were 6'7", and you were real skinny, like you were still growing in your body. So that's a process too. But ultimately you wind up going to Eastern, have an opportunity to play baseball in college, which was a step closer to where you wanted to go, right? Mm-hmm. But you had to redshirt, which, obviously you talked about it not necessarily being, it's like the low of lows.
Yes.
And so talk to us a little bit about stepping into that position, redshirting at Eastern, but also the mindset behind like, man, I'm not getting the offers or the looks that I want. And I'm not really in a place that I want to be at, but yet I know where I want to go, and I'm going to work very, very hard and be very diligent about getting to that point in that place that I want to go.
So, like what you talked about, I had a lot of people that were in my corner, but spoke truth to me, or I had a few of them that really had the knowledge and the wherewithal. My parents didn't play sports growing up, like I talked about, and they hadn't been through a college recruiting experience. So they see me having success, and my parents and I are kind of on the same page with all that. So luckily I had met people, and then kind of made connections with people who had connections, and ended up getting on that team to get to that place. So making those connections very early on, literally someone that I met whenever I was 6 years old, which Clay Overcash, who probably has, other than Rob Walton and Josh Holiday, probably he's been the most influential in my baseball journey. And honestly, no disrespect to them, but Clay has been there the whole through the whole time that I played baseball. When Clay was a kid coaching high school baseball, essentially, and I was, I mean, literally 5 or 6 years old. He's been somebody that we've always leaned on and sought advice and things like that. And so that has been, there's been a lot of people that have really been there and spoke that truth to me, whether it's about baseball or now, that really helped me. What else were you? That was just something I wanted to say. So take me back to what you were saying, because now I've lost my sense of what you were saying.
No, I was just saying, talk a little bit about, you had people along the way that you just talked about, Clay and Coach Walton, Coach Holiday, that helped you, but you had people at a young age that gave you some truth and some good advice, but also at the same time, talk about what it's like when you are at that place where you realize, okay, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. I need to work harder. You're on teams that you might not be the best player, but because a lot of people, I think they either get in a position where they're in that spot and they say, man, I just don't have what it takes. Or people get in that spot and they're like, man, like, I know I'm not at that level with a lot of these guys, but I'm going to get to that level. And you're kind of like that underdog mentality. Like, how did you have that mentality and continue to work forward and have a goal in mind of where you wanted to get?
Uh, I, I guess having that goal in mind ultimately is what it was. And even still, no matter what it is, I like to set goals for myself, because if I don't have a goal, I don't really know where I'm going. It's like if you don't know what you're shooting at, you never miss. So setting goals for me is a huge deal, whether it's personally, relationally, like with my wife and I in our marriage, or raising kids, or financially where we want to be, or whatever it might be, at the fire department, what I want to do, and for throughout my career, or the type of person I may want to be. So setting goals, I think, is a huge thing for me, because if I don't, I have to have a target. I have to have something to aim for and strive for, or you just feel like you're kind of spinning your wheels. I don't really feel like I'm going anywhere if I don't know where I'm going. You just kind of feel like you're driving in circles. So that's a big part of it, and I think just my dad teaching me from a young age to work, and I just didn't ever. I felt like, okay, I want to go play college baseball. That's just something that God had laid on my heart, and so that's just what I was going to do. It wasn't ever like, oh, well, should I or shouldn't I? And sometimes you get people around you that can negatively affect that as well. Of like, well, do you really want to go play? Like, is that really what you want to do, or do you want to come hang out? Do you want to go to college and just party and have fun and be with this group of people, and not have all that responsibility that sports are? Well, it's not going to be that fun. You're just going to have to work. It's going to be like having a job. And so if you don't have that goal of, I want to play and I know why, I just want to, that's what I'm going to do. You can easily get deterred off of that. And I think part of that's just stubbornness. You've known me as long as anybody. I'm just freaking stubborn. I decided I was going to play college baseball, so I did. And I wasn't the body type to be successful. And so I get to Eastern and I said to myself, maybe out loud, I don't know. I will talk to myself. I'm not scared to. But like they say, as long as you're not talking back, that's when it gets weird. Right? So say to myself, I'm here to play baseball. And if I want to be worth a crap, I've got to throw harder. And to throw harder, I've got to be stronger. And you look around and see these guys, and John, my freshman year, I'm showing up playing with John Gray, who's been in the big leagues with the Rockies for however a long time at this point, and he was a top round draft pick out of OU, and playing with guys that are playing at a really high level, and more guys that are Division I guys that are sought after. And so you see where those guys are, and it's not like, well, I just want to play with those guys, and maybe I'll get looks. Like, I want to be the guy that's bringing the scouts in for my boys too. I don't want to just be the one that oh, maybe there's a chance that this scout shows up to watch somebody else and I get lucky and get picked up. So I just made that decision whenever I got to Eastern of, if I want to be successful, I've got to get stronger to throw harder. And within that first year, I was just a very late bloomer, honestly. And you talked about, my body type, which you've said that a couple of times. I was 6. So I was about the height I am now, maybe a quarter, half inch shorter. So I was about 6'8", and I weighed in at our first team meeting at Eastern at 197 pounds, which is just a beanpole, man. And so here's a funny story. So we have our first team meeting, and there's a classroom that's up in the basketball gym, and we had a lot of team meetings there when we were at Eastern. So we'd show up and we go up there and we have our meeting, and you go around, everybody's kind of getting to know each other. There's the guys that have been there for a year or two, and so they already know each other, and so you're kind of talking to them, and coach is trying to get to know you, and it's, tell me a little bit about yourself, blah blah blah, all that stuff. Okay, come up here, we're going to get your height and your weight for the roster, because they, scouts want to know that stuff. And so I walk up there, and it's the old school. We're at Eastern. It's not an electronic scale. It's not a nice one. I mean, this one's scuffed up. The it's probably rusted out. And so, he's tapping it across, gets my weight, 197 pounds. And I think it was probably one of those deals where he set it up to like 200, and it just didn't touch it. And he's like, and that hits your pride. He's got to knock it back to the 150, and then it's worked his way back up there. But so then it's the old pull the stick out to measure how tall you are, right? And so he pulls it up, and he's done it however many times before me. And this is Eric Thomas with AT. He's an awesome dude. And so he pulls it up and gets it up there, pulls it plumb out of its little socket. And then he goes, well, how tall are you? I was just too tall. It was like the Too Tall Jones commercial, man. Like, I didn't even have, I've been measured like 3 times in the last 10 years, probably. You go into a doctor's office to see how tall you are, and the nurses are like 5'3". Like, well, how tall are you?
Yeah, too much work.
Yeah, and so that was one of those deals where everybody just he pulls it out of there, and like, well, we don't have anything to measure you with, so how tall are you? And everybody just loses it. I'm just really tall and super skinny and just look like a huge goober, doing just about everything. So, but that was a funny memory, the very first meeting. But anyway, so like I just knew where I needed to be, and I didn't necessarily knew what it took, but I knew what I knew that it took, because it's one of those, you don't know what you don't know type deals. So it just became a deal where everybody knew I was going to work out. And there was times in junior college, you play a full fall schedule. You play you may go play 12 innings, you might play 18 innings in a day. And it just became, I'm working out every day. And that's miserable at first, because if you're not playing, you're practicing for 4 or 5 hours. And if you are playing, you've got a full pregame BP and everything. And then you go play literally 2 games, which can seem never ending, especially whenever you have pitchers who aren't any good and are not getting out of innings, like guys who end up getting redshirted will do at times. And so those just get really, really long. And there's times we might get back at midnight or after from one of those games. Everybody knew we were going to turn our jerseys in, and they'd get washed the next day, and I was going to just go to the weight room. And so I might be in there till 1:30 in the morning, but I just decided I'm going to work out. So that just became my routine every day. I was going to find a way to get in the weight room. I was going to do something to get better, and I did what I knew to do. So setting that goal of I know where I need to get. I don't necessarily know all the other stuff of what that really means, but I know what I know, and I'm going to work at what I know to get better.
Mm-hmm. And going back to that story, talking about trying to get better, getting in the weight room more often, really building your strength so that you could play at a high level with the guys that are around you. One thing that you can see is that at JUCO at Eastern, you're around guys that are at the highest caliber of player, right? So you're having to elevate yourself, because if you don't, you're not going to play. And so you're
Yep.
doing that, but also too just the mentality that you had to have to get better, really. So when you think about it, like if you're a red shirt freshman guy and you're going into everything, you're not getting to play a lot, right? You're not playing at all redshirt year, but you're
Yep.
having to do all this stuff, which is long and tiring. But at the same time, you're putting in extra effort to make sure that you are elevating yourself to a different standard. And it's probably a lot of the times not something you necessarily want to do or feel like doing, but you push yourself to go do it. And I think that's the difference, what you see in a pattern in a lot of people that have excelled in whatever endeavor they're after, is that when they push themselves when they don't feel like it. Even when they don't
Yep.
feel like it, they go do the work. And so you were doing that. So obviously you go and have your red shirt freshman year, you have your freshman year, and then your sophomore year, and you're playing at Eastern, and you're seeing some strides that you're making, right? Some progression. How did you wind up going and getting to Oklahoma State from Eastern?
Rob Walton having a lot of faith in me. Obviously, obviously we talked about going to Bishop Kelly, and then Rob's two boys and his daughter ended up as well, but went to Bishop Kelly. So I had known Rob. He had seen me play just from him coming to watch Donnie play. And I graduated with Davis, his oldest son, and played in high school with Donnie. And Donnie and I ended up uh, forging a really good friendship because they just lived right down the road from me. And so, you know, like it is having three kids, you're all over the place. And, dad's a college baseball coach and he's hooked up all the time. So Donnie and I spent a lot of time together just coming home from baseball practice, and became really good friends, even with Donnie being a couple years younger than me, uh, through high school. And so anyway, so Rob had seen me whenever I was in high school and just what it might be, and he had spent some time with me in high school trying to help me out, um, to help me get to where I wanted to be. And so he was somebody who had seen me and saw a lot of potential in me. Whenever Rob came to watch me throw, my third year of junior college was the same day. And I honestly don't even remember if Rob came to watch me. He may have been coming to watch somebody else, because we were playing down at Grayson Community College, and they had this stud third baseman. He was bad to the bone, but I think he ended up being the third rounder or something. So that's probably who Rob was honestly coming to watch play that day. But he shows up, and there was a couple of colleges that were coming to watch me play that I'd been talking to for a while. And after that, I didn't hear from any of them. But we knew Rob, my parents knew Rob, and my mom ended up saying, "Hey, how are you?" I kind of talked to Rob for a minute, and Rob had said like, "Hey, just tell Mike I'll call him. I'm gonna, to be ready that I'm gonna call him." And same deal. Like a week goes by, a couple of weeks go by, and I'm like, Rob's at OSU. Like that. In my mind, I'm like OSU or Arkansas. That's where I would want to be. And for whatever reason, and I don't hear from Rob for like a month, and then he finally called me and was like, "Hey, uh, we want you to come play." He's like, "I don't know if I have a scholarship for you. We'll see what happens, And that's kind of how it works when you're coming out of junior college, especially when you're not a big top recruit. Like I'd gotten better at that point, but I still just wasn't. I wasn't a guy that was going to come in and start right away. I was a guy that needed a lot of development still, even at 21 years old. And so if that guy's got faith in me, I mean, he's the man. He is the man, especially in pitching in college baseball. They call him the wizard, and I mean, that's no joke. I mean, he's got it figured out. That guy, it's unbelievable. That guy has forgotten more about baseball than I'll ever know, and it shows. But yeah, just Rob having a ton of faith in me ultimately, and that was another part of that's another lesson in being humble. Is I was not incredibly happy at junior college because and maybe that's one of those things where you kind of put some pressure on yourself. Well, if I'm not good enough to leave after a good year in junior college, then I don't want to come back. And saying, well, if I get an offer, I'm gone. If I get an offer from someplace decent, I'm gonna go. Well, I did get a couple of offers from some decent places, and then God's just tugging at you. Nope, I want you here. I want you right. Like, this is where you need to be. And it just didn't feel right. And he just told me to stay put, and that's where I stayed. And so then I got that opportunity to go to Oklahoma State. And man, if I ended up going anywhere else, I can't imagine what my life would be like now, because it definitely wouldn't be what it is. And from the opportunity to go play baseball to start a relationship with Delaney, with my wife, which started in that third year while I was at junior college, while I was in Oklahoma, that likely would not have started had I gone to Central Arkansas or out to a school in Virginia. Like those things wouldn't have happened, and then I wouldn't have the kids that I have. So many of those things that have happened since then. Just can't imagine where I would be if I had just tried to rely on myself and what I wanted for myself in that moment. So, yeah, I ended up at Oklahoma State because Rob saw something in me, and likely part of that is because Josh trusted Rob to say, this guy's got like a 4.5 ERA in a okay junior college league, and this is who you want to bring in, Rob. Like, as a guy, as a head coach, would be like, and you're saying we should give him scholarship money? Like, yeah. As a head coach, I would have probably had a really tough time. But
that's why he's the wizard, because he can talk people into it, right? That too.
Oh gosh, I mean, must be. I cannot imagine how that conversation went. I probably need to ask about that conversation, but yeah, just a lot of people believing in me whenever I probably didn't deserve it, especially Rob.
Yeah, and one of the things, going back to that, a little point in that is that, I mean, you had made strides, right? But it wasn't like they were just like you're killing it, blowing things out of the water. Coach Walton believed in you, and he saw something in you, and it's finding the people that believe in you, and having them around you. That's so important. Not just someone that believes in you, but also that helps instill belief in yourself, right? And so you get a chance to go to Oklahoma State, which is like the pinnacle of where you wanted to go, right? I mean, it's probably one of the top places. I mean, it couldn't have asked for a better opportunity. And no matter if it was scholarship money, no scholarship money, walk on, whatever it was, like, you would have wanted to go there ideally, and you had an opportunity to have a scholarship. But you get there, and what was that like, that experience? You go from JUCO to Oklahoma State. I think, was it Coach Holiday a year or two in to being the head coach there, or was he a couple years in? I don't remember.
So I was in his first recruiting class. So he got there the year before I transferred there.
That's right.
So, man, that getting there, you look at the old Alley P Stadium and you're like, this is a dump. But whenever I showed up, I was like, this is amazing. I mean, when I was at Eastern, our locker room was our hallway of our dorm. our baseball bags and gear sat out in our hallway because it all stunk, or it sat in the bed of your truck or whatever. And we didn't have a locker room. We had a bathroom at the field. And I mean, it's just a junior college. It's what it is. So you get there, and these guys are like, man, this place is so old and falling apart. And I'm just like, guys, I have my own locker.
Yeah.
There's a TV in a locker room, and it's big. Someone washes my laundry for me. Like when I'm in junior college, we have 3 t-shirts for the whole fall. And realistically, is a freshman in college going to wash their shirts every 2 days? I'm gonna probably just wring it out. I'm gonna run it under some water and wring it out and let it air dry. So it's like I have clean clothes. They give me a free gear, and it's not heavy cotton shirts. I'm getting shoes. I get a free glove.
Yeah.
And so that the allure of like all that stuff, that's super cool, and that's super cool to a kid. But ultimately, what it came down to is having awesome coaches and awesome guys. And so I went there in the summer before. They had a summer bridge program is what they call it. So the guys that are transferring in for their first semester, it's an NCAA deal where you can come in and they kind of just allows you to walk into college and not have to dive in the fall. And so I was there for the first month of that. The second month, almost all of the freshmen that were incoming in my recruit class came as well. And I had to go because I had to meet some NCAA requirements for school, or I probably would have gone and played college summer baseball. And so that was great for me to get to spend a lot of time getting going, spending time with the coaching staff, a lot of one-on-one time when they were in town and not out recruiting. But then focus on school, get to spend a lot of one-on-one time coaching with those guys, with Rob, and man, it was a complete overhaul mechanically for me. So that time was invaluable. I don't know how many bullpens Mark Ginther caught up in the indoor up there by Alley P. Just 100 degrees. Mark's in full gear. Rob does amazing things, and some of the stuff he does, like you look at him, you're like, you're crazy. Like, why do you want me to do this? But I never questioned him. But like in that moment, if anybody didn't know Rob and they're just coming off the street, I'm at like 45 feet, crow hopping, throwing a ball as hard as I could to Mark Ginther. And at this point, I am throwing 90, and it wasn't anatomically healthy. It wasn't good mechanics, but I'm throwing hard, and that doesn't feel good to wear those off the chest, even through gear or anything.
Sure.
And I'm all over the place. Control was not my strong suit. And I'm all over the place. And man, that first summer there was awesome. It was a lot of fun, getting to know them and them getting to know me and everything. And then moving into the fall, and everybody shows up and gets there, and you really get to meet your teammates, and man, that was a lot of fun. Those are the things that you remember, your teammates and those relationships, and still text with Rob and Josh, and have a group text with a bunch of the guys that I played with while I was at OSU, and those relationships that were formed are literally forever. Those are guys that I'd do anything for. So that's kind of how that time played out. And we did some awesome stuff while I was there too. Made it to a super regional, made it to a regional, and hosted a super regional, hosted a regional while I was there. Hosted 2 regionals, I guess. But the stuff, man, a lot of that stuff on the field is not stuff I really remember. It's the time that I spent with those guys. Honestly, in the locker room, if there was a place, like it was in the locker room at Alley P Reynolds Stadium, which is OSU baseball, old baseball stadium. When I say Alley P, but yeah, those were a lot. That was the most fun I ever had playing baseball,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, let's dive into that first year at Oklahoma State. You got there, and they had they had some success before? I mean, you guys were building the program back up because Coach Holiday had just taken over.
Yeah.
You're at old LAP Stadium, and you're getting there's a lot of good talent around you. So you had a really good team, and you guys are continuing to build the culture. Coach Holiday's and Coach Walton, all the coaches are continuing to build the culture and develop the type of guys that they want to have on their team. And that first year, did you guys? How was that?
Um,
Did you go to
man,
the
we
regional?
that was we hosted the regional. We won. So the
Yes.
first year we won the regular Big 12 regular season, and then made it to the championship game of the tournament, and then hosted a regional, hosted a super regional, and lost to Cal State Fullerton, who
That's
was
yes.
hot team.
I forgot. I totally
So
forgot that was your first year because basically you got to play a little bit that first year, a little bit, not much, but it
not,
was
yeah, I was like there.
yeah.
It was like a glorified red shirt.
But as your friend, obviously it was so much fun to just go to the games and watch and just be a part of it because I didn't really go to many baseball games before because I can't remember if that was my first year at Oklahoma State or not. But um, anyway, regardless, I remember you were on the team, didn't get to play a lot, but you were on the team. It was a great experience for you, and it was really fun when you did get to pitch and get to watch you play and whatnot. But I do want to point out that you didn't get a ton of playing time, and you when you got to play, it wasn't like you were having tremendous success either.
No.
Which it's tough to be just thrown into games and be able to perform at a high level, right? So my point being, one of the experiences that I remember, obviously going back to an experience, I just thought about how you got engaged that year. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so it was we had opening weekend on uh, Valentine's Day, and so I was like, "Hey, we're gonna do our Valentine's Day that you know after that night after the game, whatever." So then I said, "Hey, let's." I talked to the guy that takes pictures at the stadium, and I'm gonna have him take some pictures of us, on the field since we don't have very many. I asked him, and he said he would. So you can go down there and uh, walk out there, and in the middle of him taking pictures, I had you guys run up there with the sign, said marry him. And so I got down and he proposed. Luckily, she said yes. Uh, she's funny, man. I don't know if you were sitting with her prior to that, but she's like, man, there, and of course, it's a night where it misted for like 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I think it was a Tuesday night game, either Tuesday or Wednesday. I can't remember, but it was like, of course. And so she just being herself, man, this is weird. All of our friends showed up for a Tuesday night game. Like, this is funny. And, you guys don't have to stay. The weather sucks. Like
Yeah.
he may not even pitch. We'll see. So, of course, I ended up pitching and throw an inning and make an error. My cleats get packed down with mud, and I just launched a ball. Went to turn a double play and launched a ball into center field and give up a run. And she's like, "That's the thing you're always going to remember about the night we got engaged." I'm like, "Yes,
Yes.
actually, it is." But yeah, she was super surprised. That was special to have that moment happen there at the stadium and kind of be a part of our life forever. And I kind of, baseball is such a big part of our life for a long time, and especially at that point in our life, it was cool.
Yeah. Very
And
cool.
so when I threw that idea out there to Josh and Rob, they're like, "You want to do what? Are you sure?" They were like, "Are you going to be able to stay focused for a game if you're going to be doing that after?" And I was like,
Obviously not. I'm just kidding.
"Yeah, man, I warmed up for that. They told me I was going in, and I don't. And you can ask Mark Ginther or any of those guys that were in the bullpen with me. I don't think I threw a single strike, not a single strike in the bullpen. And I didn't feel like I was nervous to get engaged or anything, but I was just like, I'm losing my mind right now. I can't do anything right. So yeah, so that was funny. That was an awesome moment, and
Yeah.
glad that all the guys and got to be a part of all that, and that's something that we got to share.
Yeah, it was a very cool moment. But another cool moment of that season is I remember I was in Australia on a study abroad trip. I don't know, I think it might have been Facebook message or I don't know, text or whatever it was, but I remember you reaching out because you guys were playing in the Big 12 tournament and you make it to the championship game because you guys did have success that season. And I remember, I don't know if, I can't remember what happened. I don't know if there's too many guys that had pitched that night. I can't remember what the deal was, but you got to
Yeah,
pitch, start the Big 12 championship game.
yeah,
And you text me
yeah,
like, I think I'm starting. And I was like, I was pumped. I loved Australia, but I was kind of frustrated. Like, man, I'm not gonna be able to be at the game. It's a bummer, but it was really cool to that experience. It was a fun experience too.
yeah. That was definitely a cool experience to be able to pitch there and throw against TCU in the championship game. We lost early on, and so then we had to fight our way back through the losers bracket, and I was literally the only pitcher who hadn't pitched, and so I had thrown like I can't remember. I threw a third of an inning or 2/3 of an inning uh, a week or two before that, and then I hadn't thrown like in a real game probably a month or 5 or 6 weeks before that. And then I went and started a game, and yeah, that was an experience. I started cramping up in like the second inning, and probably about 50 pitches in, and I think I ended up throwing like 110 or more. Uh, just my forearms cramping up, my calf and hamstring are cramping up every pitch I throw. I mean, I was throwing a pitch and I'd finish and my hand would be stuck here and I'd catch the ball back and put my hand in there and try and stretch it back out. But man, yeah, it was fun. It was fun for sure. And I had been throwing, my velocity had been way down for whatever reason. Whenever I'd throw, I was throwing like 84, 85, and show up and the stadium gun saying 90, and I think they went and asked one of the scouts like, is that right, or is he actually throwing that hard? And they were like, yeah, like he's actually throwing like 88, 90. And I remember everybody being like, where has this been, man? Like after the first inning or second inning, like, where's this been? And
Yeah.
I had a few good innings, and then ended up giving up several runs, but it was a cool experience,
Oh yeah.
and just kind of push through and try and get our team, try to eat some innings and get through, because I knew I was all we had at that point, and we're going into regionals and we've got a really good chance, and I know, hey, we're not gonna bring guys back on short rest and get them hurt whenever we have something a lot more important than this game.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
So that was an awesome experience. You got to do that, and you guys moved on and hosted regionals. Then you hosted super regionals. Wound up losing to Cal State, Fullerton. But you wound up going that summer and playing summer baseball and having a chance to play in Wisconsin. Had a good season up there. Got a chance to play with some different level guys and see that. But then you came back going into your senior season. And I want to talk about this because regardless of the success or the lack of success that you might have wanted to have or wanted to see, you kept continuing to work, continuing to be diligent, just put in the work in the weight room, put in the work on the field, practicing and all the different ways, whatever it took to get to the goals that you had set before yourself. Because I think it goes back to that one thing we talked about where many people can be very discouraged by not reaching their goals in a certain time period or manner that they want to reach them. But you continue to just put in the work and be diligent. Um, and so you had that summer, you're putting in the work in the off season, have fall ball. Then you finally start to go in the season. I remember you guys went down to Phoenix, Scottsdale area, and you're playing in those first couple of games of the season down there. I remember you got to pitch that first game you started, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and you had a great outing, great two outings, I think, while you were down there, right?
Yeah, we were down here. We were down there for a while. So yeah, I had 2 outings while we were down there, and yeah, I threw pretty well both times.
And so I remember you texted me, and I think you threw like a complete game while you're down there or something like that. Was that right?
Went pretty deep into some game. I don't think I think I went into the 7th inning, maybe maybe in both of them, or at least through 5 or 6, and threw pretty well. And yeah, yeah, and got rolling, and didn't really know what to expect going into that spring of, am I going to start? Am I not? I had a lot of success in the fall. I had a lot of success in that summer before, and I'd really just kind of relaxed, and not put so much pressure on every moment. Sometimes you can want something too much. You try to force it, and a lot of times, the more, what I've learned is the more you try to force something to happen, it pushes back. So I just relaxed and said, I'm going to have fun playing baseball, and not care so much about, is Rob watching me? Does he think I'm doing well? Like trying to get inside their minds and care what they think. And I'm just going to go play and have fun. And that's what that summer before allowed me to do, because there's no pressure on summer ball. There's not practice. You have BP, and you get to just hang out and have fun. And I had Corey Hassel up there with me, and made several friends from that summer league, and we just had a ton of fun all summer. And I had an awesome host family that I still talk to today, and they actually came down to Oklahoma City last summer and spent some time down here, and got to kind of show them around and spend time with them. But regardless, get into that spring, and or I guess we'd probably go back to the fall. I was throwing pretty well that summer before it kind of rolled into the fall, and man, stuff just clicked, and it was like, take all that pressure off myself, and all the stuff that Rob had wanted me to do clicked. There's some mechanical adjustments that we had been tinkering with, and it all just panned out the way that probably better than any of us could have hoped for. I just can't. I would think. I don't think Rob's like, Mike's going to end up being an All American at senior year. Like, well, Mike may give us a few innings of senior year, and hopefully that'd be great. But yeah, just relax and started to have fun, and it was really good. We get into the fall, and probably the time, I felt pretty good. I've been throwing well through the summer and through the fall, and but I probably still just wasn't walking around with a ton of confidence, just because I'd been humbled so much. Rob sits us down after an inter squad that we had in Division I baseball. It's all inter squads in the fall. So because NCAA rules, now they can go play 1 or 2 games or whatever it is, and that's becoming more prevalent. But at that point, we didn't. So we just played it. We just had inter squads all the time. I threw 3 innings, and I struck out 8 or 9 guys. And so we're sitting in the dugout, and Rob pulled us all together and talking about what had gone on in the scrimmage. And I can't remember how it came out. He said something along the lines of like, guys, who's the nastiest pitcher on the staff right now? Like, or no, here's what. So he said, guys, can anybody on this team hit Mike? If Mike's on the mound, can anybody hit him? And everyone, there's, I don't know, 15, 18 pitchers on the staff. And so we're all sitting there. It's half our team. And it wasn't a hesitation. Everybody was like, no. And I was like, and Rob's like, did you hear that? And I was like, yeah. He's like, all these guys think that. So why don't you? Like, why don't you realize that? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I've just sucked forever. Like, I've always been like supposed to be good. And everybody's like, you have so much potential. It's like, well, potential hasn't got me any confidence, Rob, like, to be honest with you. And So that was probably the moment that it just kind of clicked. Like, hey, like my whole team believes in me. My coach believes in me, um, and just such a huge confidence booster. Like as a coach, to see that like I'm not just exuding confidence, and that was a moment that I really remember. The other super cool thing about that was we were recruiting one of Mike Matheny's sons to OSU, and so I'm pretty sure that that Matheny and his son were in the stands for that game, and so I've got a big league manager at that point.
Yeah. For those that don't
Uh,
know, Mike Matheny was the manager for the St. Louis Cardinals. Now he's the manager for the Royals, I believe. Just for context.
yeah, and so it's like, man, I just shoved, and to be honest with you, like it was, I don't know. That's like whenever I realized I was nasty, and I made some really good hitters look pretty silly that day. And so, to do that in front of a big league manager and then to have that meeting afterwards and all of my teammates be like, your stuff is awesome. Like if you would have some faith in yourself, if you would believe that you're good. And my coach who hung the moon to tell me that, that was a huge turning point in my baseball career. Like obviously I'd already gone and had a ton of success that summer, but it was short lived. I lost a month or 6 weeks because I went up there and in my very first outing, uh, and even in my first outing, I started throwing better, which was crazy because I hadn't thrown very well a month before that against TCU in that Big 12 tournament game. But I go up there and I think I was like no hit through 5 and go over and I'm covering first on a ground ball to the first baseman and fracture my ankle in the first game. The lip on between the grass and dirt was like 5 inches. And so stepped off in that, trying to catch that ball. And so then I was out for half the summer. But I was like, that was small sample size. I threw well, but it wasn't, it was probably just luck. And so then to get that confirmation from my coach and my teammates really just boosted me through the rest of that fall and winter and into the spring.
Yeah, and that's definitely something we want to touch on here in just a little bit about confidence and how important that is and how critical it is to just overall success and doing the things that you want to accomplish. But you had that great fall going to the season. You wound up having a fantastic season. I mean, really storybook season, really.
Yeah.
Because I remember, like we talked about just a little bit ago, you had some outings where at the start you were in Arizona. You had some really good outings, and that carried over to each game that you pitched. You really didn't have a bad game. And I remember, I think you were playing TCU, and I think Chandler and I had been out. I think we were actually in Arizona for spring break, and we just gotten back, and we were gonna try to go to that game. And I think for some reason, because our flight flew into Dallas,
Yeah.
and we thought you were pitching Saturday, but in fact you pitched Sunday, and so
Yeah.
we wound up missing it. But we got to watch it when we were back home in Tulsa on TV, and I just remember that game that solidified because before I was like Mike's doing really well. This is really fun. Like I hope he can keep it going, But
Yeah.
that was like watching that game and watching you pitch, and it was like, man, he's gonna keep it going. Like this is the real deal. Like this isn't any joke. Like he's got the confidence to continue doing what he's doing. And you were making some really good players look really stupid on TV. So it was really cool, but the progression of confidence for sure carried over throughout the season.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even know I was going to start. I texted Rob. Rob had kind of said, well, uh, you're not going to start these first 2 games, but you might be in relief, to start the season. And if you don't, then you might start Sunday. We'll see. I was like, I honestly don't really know. So I texted Rob at like 10 o'clock on Saturday night before that Sunday game, and or maybe even called him. I can't remember what it was. It was like, hey, am I started? Like, you had mentioned this. Am I starting tomorrow? Because no one knows who's starting tomorrow. And you had mentioned that to me. He's like, yeah, Mike, you're starting. See you in the morning. And I go like, Rob's just so like matter of fact and like gruff, like just straight to the point. It's like, okay, cool. But and to not know if I was going to play or not, and then to end up having the season I had, I mean, storybook is probably the perfect description of what it was, man. It just felt so many times before that I'd been even within an outing. It's like, well, when's stuff going to go wrong? You might have good 3 or 4 good innings and then go walk the house and give up a double. And then you've gone from like 4 1-hit innings to giving up 4 runs in an outing. And it's just, it all goes to crap, quite frankly. And I don't know. I got out of that mindset. And Rob always, man, it made me so mad when I first got to OSU. It's like, okay, well, how do you do X, Y, or Z? Like, how do I do this then? And Rob's like, you just freaking throw the ball. You just throw it. You just do it. Like, you quit worrying about all that stuff and you just throw it. You just say, I'm going to strike this guy out and I'm going to beat this team, and you just do it. And I was like, I need to know how. Like, I'm not that way. Like, I'm so analytical. I need a step-by-step guidance of how to get there. And I wanted it to be a step-by-step, and it's not. I mean, and I carry that with me with a lot of different things now of keep it simple. Like, keep it as absolutely simple as you can. And that's the best way to do things. It's not. And Josh was this way with team rules, or it was expectations, essentially, of like, this is the expectation. This is the program you're representing. This is the team. These are your teammates. These are your coaches. If you have to do anything to negatively affect any of that, to the program, your coaches, your teammates, then you shouldn't do it. You guys are grown men. I don't need to tell you, don't go out and do drugs. I don't need to tell you, don't drink and drive. You all know what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. And if you have to think, should I or shouldn't I, you shouldn't do it. And so that's getting off topic, but man, just so many of those things, so many of those little steps. It wasn't like there was one day I just woke up and had confidence. It was so many little things, just the same way as it wasn't losing confidence to that point wasn't one thing or another. But I built confidence by doing it, by having fun, by relaxing. And like I said, not trying, instead of trying to force something, I was just enjoying it. And that's kind of where I was. I was a 5th-year senior. I knew there was nowhere else. Like, I was either going to play that year or I wasn't, but I might as well enjoy it. And that's it. That's really freeing whenever, instead of like, it's my last year, I have to play well, I have to be on the team, to say, it's my last year, I better enjoy it. I'm going to have fun. And I completely, and coaching and talking to guys and maybe mentoring younger players. That's one thing I talk about, because you could hear that in my voice of like, it's my 5th year, I have to play, I have to be on the team, versus, hey, it's my 5th year, I'm going to have fun playing baseball. And if that ends up with me being successful on the field, great. If not, then I get to at least enjoy my time and not put pressure on myself and hate everything that I'm doing. And the way I'm talking to myself right there, you hear the difference. And a lot of the self-talk and stuff like that was something that was really addressed in a book that you gave me, and we've talked about this, but Mind Gym, that's something I don't read a lot. My reading comprehension is miserable ultimately. So I have to read things like 10 times. And I'll read 5 pages and like, I don't know what that just said, but you gave me Mind Gym. And whenever I was in my when I was in my 3rd year of junior college, and I ended up loaning it to a couple of teammates. who were like-minded individuals. And that's probably one, it addressed that, and like how you talk to yourself and how that affects how you feel about yourself and your ability to have success consistently. Um, and that's something that I pass on to everybody that I can, is instead of saying, don't put pressure on yourself, hey, have fun and enjoy the game and see what happens. And ultimately, you're going to have more success when you're that way, anyways. But raising kids, or in my marriage, instead of telling my kids, don't go outside, it's, hey, stay inside. And whenever you can talk to somebody that way, it's a more respectful tone. It's not an authoritarian tone. And you have a lot more success, and you gain a lot more trust from them. And, I'm talking about a 1 and 3 year old kid, but when you're trying to teach somebody something, pitching, hey, don't open your front side. Well, and this is a line from one of my buddies, Keenan Simon. Your mind just it does not process the word don't. So when you say don't open your front side when you take your stride, all your mind can think about is opening up your front side. And so if I say whatever, don't be late, why don't I just say be on time? It's the same thing, but I'm talking to myself in a different way. And those things are what helped me build confidence in myself, because I wasn't telling myself what to not do. I was telling myself what to do at that point, and started really changing my outlook on things in sports. And that's really changed my outlook on the way I handle a lot of things. Don't screw this up again. Don't walk this guy. Hey, just throw a strike. That's what we're trying to do. Why am I worried about walking a guy? Because I can't control if I walk the guy or not. I want to throw the ball to the catcher's mitt. And if I do that, then that's the only thing I can control. So really, those things allowed me changing the way that I thought, whether that's taking pressure off myself in each moment, trying to figure out what other people thought, if other people were pleased with the way I was playing, or what the scout or coach was thinking, if I was going to get recruited or whatever. And then the way that I viewed myself and the way I talked to myself helped to build confidence. Because when you're constantly telling yourself, don't do this, don't do that, don't walk this guy, don't screw up in front of this scout, does he think I'm doing well? I'm not focusing on the thing that I'm ultimately trying to do. If I'm sitting there trying to figure out, and at times I was in the outfield and left field at Alley P. Reynolds Stadium, thinking, is Rob watching me playing catch right now? Like, is he happy with what I'm doing? Am I doing the things that he wants me to do? And I'm throwing the ball all over the yard because I'm so worried about what he's doing that I'm not thinking about actually playing catch. I'm not focused on that. And that's so easy to do. And it's so easy to say, like, just focus on what you're doing. But at the same time, I'm trying to play catch, but I'm trying to pitch. I'm trying to be a part of the team. I'm trying to make a difference. So it's easy to say, not so easy to do, but it just took a lot of consistency on my part, a lot of mentoring and coaching from Rob, not necessarily about that exact instance, but just telling me, just throw the ball, just throw the ball, just throw the strike, just shove it down their throat, and they're not going to like it, and it's going to be awesome. And so that's where I gained a ton of confidence that way, learned so much, and really, really changed my life. Because it's not just in sports; it's in, like I said, like talked about my parenting at the fire department, which that's a big team as well, atmosphere as well, and then in my marriage.
Yeah, and confidence is so critical to success because you have to believe in yourself to be able to do the things that you want to do. Because if you don't believe, you're not going to be able to achieve that. And so that's critical. Also, as you talked about positive self-talk, not just like foo-foo words, but like truthful, positive self-talk.
Truly meaning it and believing it. Yeah, and that's kind of coaching. Whenever I talk to guys, it's like you have to have positive self-talk, and it's not like, oh, you're the best player ever. Oh, you're so great, Johnny. Like everything you do is perfect. It's like, hey, I can do this. Just throw the ball here. And positive as in a sense of not negative. Just throw the ball to the glove instead of don't hit this guy or don't give up a home run or, just tell yourself what you're trying to do. It's kind
Mm-hmm.
of that. And so coaching wise, I think that I try to pass that same stuff on because that's the stuff that helped me so much. And so many people tell players, well, you need to work on your mental game. Okay. What does that mean? How do I work on my mental game? However many coaches told me I need to work on my mental game, but they didn't tell me how to work on my mental game. And that's the same stuff. And if you don't learn that through sports, I don't know how you learn that, to be honest with you. In any other avenue, I'm sure you do, but for me, I don't see it. But if you don't learn that, then I would still be that way as a person, uh, which is scary. Like if all these things hadn't lined up to get to that point for me to learn that life lesson there as a 24-year-old at that point, like I do not feel like I would be very successful today in a lot of the things that I do.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and just I love the phrase you used. You built confidence. You were able to build that positive self talk. All these things were progression that you built over time. And so one of the things I want to mention about Rob is he said, just go out there and pitch. Just go out there and throw the strike the guy out. Well, obviously it clicked for you that season, but you can't just go do that if you haven't done the work. Like all throughout your life, you were doing the work to prepare you for those moments. So when it did click, it clicked. But if you didn't do the work, you didn't put in the time, you probably wouldn't have had the results that you saw. So you did the work prior to all these points in your life to get to that point, and then
yeah,
obviously success followed in a big way. Where that season as your senior year, you became a All American, your Big 12 Pitcher of the Year. I don't know the stats for you, but you had great success. You wound up getting drafted by the Astros in the seventh round, and it was really cool just to watch that progression and really click for you. So we've talked about all these different things, real quickly because I know I want to be conscious of time, but you had an opportunity to go play with the Astros or, to play in their minor league club,
yeah,
and you wound up going. And I remember one of the things when I was looking at some of the stuff, and I don't really follow too much of the draft board stuff or any of the, you know, stuff about different teams, but I remember watching and seeing how at one point you were the guy that they thought in the draft was going to make it to the major leagues the fastest. I remember reading that. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. That's awesome.
yeah.
And you really elevated quickly in their club in those first 2 years playing minor league ball. What was that transition like for you? First off, actually, what was it like to get drafted? What was that moment like? All that hard work, and you have an opportunity to get drafted in the seventh round and play baseball professionally. Just talk about that experience real quick.
Man, that whole the draft process is crazy because everybody tells you they think they know where you're going to go, and no one has a clue. Ultimately, there's so many people involved in all that. So, um, and I was just an anomaly essentially. I was a fifth year senior, almost 25 years old, just starting a major league career or a professional career, a minor league career. Most guys want to be starting their major league career by the time they're that age, and I just wanted to start getting paid to do it. Um, so that was crazy. It was a lot of ups and downs, and you have expectations of what's going to happen, but you have no control over it. I've already done everything I can do. Now it's somebody else's turn to pick who goes where. So I'm there with my family and get to the point of just being frustrated of like, I see this guy that's gone before me and he's not as good as me. He's gone, 2 rounds ago, he got picked. And that guy is not the type of player I am. Like, why would they want him instead of me? And then, well, why is it not me? Why, all that stuff. You start questioning it. You start, same deal. You go back to that thinking and worrying about what other people think and why things are happening instead of just, I've taken care of it. Just wait for somebody to say my name. And at that point, I knew I was getting drafted. I had done the work and I had earned it. I knew I was getting drafted. But then you start to get a little entitled and think like, I deserve to be picked pretty high. Like I'm pretty good. And that wasn't necessarily an outward thought. That was an inward thought of like, I've done really well this year. But I was so old. I had only pretty much played that year at OSU. I didn't really play the year before. And so people were like a little afraid to take me, I think, just because it was short-lived success at that point. I was old and I threw from a weird arm angle and the ball moved weird ways. And it was like, can he continue doing this? And so that, the Astros ended up picking me. And that was really cool. It was exciting. Got to have that moment with my family and get to enjoy that with them. And some of my close friends got to spend that time with them. And yeah, I mean, it was cool to have the opportunity to go play. The atmosphere is way different. Josh Holiday, Coach Holiday, really created a team environment of, we're not going to have guys here. He did a great job as a leader of creating leaders that had positive impacts. And a lot of the leadership stuff that I teach and preach and use today is because of the stuff that he taught. And so it was all team focused. If I'm not doing things it doesn't matter. There's only 9 guys on the field, and that's more of a football thing, but there's only 9 guys on the field at a time. And we have a 28 man roster. Yeah, somebody's got to be the guy that doesn't play. Somebody has to be the guy that is at every game and doesn't get to play. And so if that's the role you fill, then that's the role you fill, because that's still a role. If you're the guy that doesn't travel that week, that's still a role to fill. And if you're negatively impacting the team with your role, then all you are is an energy taker. And you're not doing yourself any good, because you're just making yourself bitter, not making the team better, because you're just bringing negative attitude to a team. And so everybody has a role. In professional baseball, you don't have a role. Your role is take care of yourself. And the general consensus of things is take care of yourself. I'm trying to get to the big leagues. What can I do to get to the big leagues? Now, you make friends and there's things that go on that way, but the general culture of professional sports is very self-oriented. And that just wasn't something I appreciated. Like I said, the baseball was fun at OSU, but the team was where I had fun. The time with my friends and my brothers is the stuff that I cherished. And so when you get into those atmospheres where minor league games, it really doesn't matter if you win or lose at all. So maybe you'd have a hitter. We might have got beat 10-2, and one guy went 4 for 4 with 2 doubles, and he is walking around, cock of the walk. He's the man. We just got the crap kicked out of us, like that. And that was tough for me to handle. And being in the bullpen, and you start to hear guys like you're coming down to the 9th inning and it's a tie game, and we have the bases loaded against us, and guys in the bullpen are like, hey, they're like, man, I hope he gives this run up so we don't go to extra innings and we can just go home. I'm just like, no. How can you be a competitive person at all, even claim to be a competitive person, and be wishing that our team would lose? And that's one of those that was really tough for me to handle, is overcoming that atmosphere. And I didn't do a great job of it. Early on I did, and then I was struggling physically and in throughout the season, just with my abilities, which came a lot from uh, struggling physically, just from fatigue, ultimately. But uh, that ended up being a really, that was probably the toughest thing, was going from such a team oriented atmosphere to the lack of that in professional baseball. And that's probably the worst thing about professional sports. It's the best thing because you do have to take care of yourself, and some people do a lot better job of getting through that and focusing on what they need to focus on. And that's one thing that was really a struggle for me. But man, we got to go a lot of places and go do a lot of things that we never would have had I not gotten to play professional baseball. A lot of time on a bus, that's for sure. But all over Texas, and I mean, I started out playing in Iowa, in the Midwest League, and then went out to the California League, and then to the Texas League. And so, I mean, that whole, like, that half of the country, I was all over playing, just in professional baseball. So that was cool. That was a really fun opportunity to get to do that and go to a ton of different parks. And Delaney and I were married at that point, so getting to experience all that stuff together. And even whenever I wasn't playing the way I wanted to play, like, we were doing it together and living our life the way we wanted to, and it was fun. We got, it's cool. It's cool to be able to experience that with someone you love, and to do that with Delaney was some really great times.
Yeah, absolutely. You had a lot of great experiences playing professional baseball. One of the fun ones was you got to go down. You're at the major league club. You got to play down in Mexico City. I remember getting to watch that game, and obviously, growing up for me, I'm a big Cardinals fan. And I remember whenever you came into the game, we were watching on TV or on a phone, and I think you went up against John Jay, who was a longtime Cardinal for a while.
Yeah.
Got him out, so that was a really cool experience. But you get to play against and with a lot of really, really good players, and I think Alex Bregman was on your team in Double A.
Yeah.
You got to play with some of those guys like Jose Altuve, all the Astros when you're in spring training and going down there with the club. So a lot of cool experiences that you got to participate in. And then eventually you decided to hang up the cleats a little bit and make a transition to get out of baseball and to just start fresh within working and just kind of retiring. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, because as you see throughout your life, you really keep pushing and you keep going and you don't stop, you don't quit. And then I think it's tough for a lot of people. How do you discern between, all right, I'm going to keep pushing, I'm going to keep going, and that's what I need to keep doing. But then there's times where it's like, okay, well, I need to actually maybe slow down and maybe transition into a different route to where I'm going. And how did you do that with your decision to get out of baseball?
So I was actually talking about this the other day with, I think it was at the fire station with somebody, but uh, I think leading up to that, I thought that you would feel like you were quitting. Um, I would have felt like I was quitting if I gave up, or felt like I was giving up if I decided to retire, if I decided not to play anymore. And I think God just really prepared my heart for it, is ultimately what it comes down to. I got it was pretty much a whirlwind, which you know about, but there was some stuff that was going on, and Delaney and I had started trying to get pregnant. And so we wake up on I guess it was a Sunday morning, so here's what it was. We had a day game, went to dinner afterwards together, and Delaney's looking at me, and I'm just like, well, she always is. She's all smiling and, just giggling. I just looked at her, I was like, "Are you pregnant?" She was like, "Maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure." And so, we wake up the next morning on a Monday, and, she takes pregnancy test and she's pregnant. I'm like, well, cool, we're having a baby. And get on the bus at like noon and drive to San Antonio, play in San Antonio that night, get called into the office and got released that night, like 12 hours later. So that was kind of a whirlwind. And I ended up on the way. We had to, that next morning we had to drive back to Corpus Christi, get all our stuff, and then we were going to drive home. Well, Pete Incaviglia calls me, who's one of the best, I mean, probably the biggest power hitter in college baseball history. He played at OSU. And he's coached independent league baseball for a long time. He's coaching a team out of the Dallas Fort Worth area, and he's like, "Hey, I just saw, I watched the sheet of who gets released and signings and everything, and saw you got released, so I'm giving you a call. Do you want to come pitch for us?" And I was like, "To be honest with you, Pete, no, I don't. I want to play. I want to play affiliated baseball. I don't want to play independent league." And of course, because I've said I didn't want to, that's where God led me. So that's what he had laid out in my plan. So I went and played. It ended up being an awesome thing for me. I got to spend some time with my oldest sister, who's 13 years older than me, and her husband, who, I haven't got to spend significant time with before. And I ended up spending the whole summer staying at their house, playing baseball. And independent league baseball is not glamorous at all. And so I think that kind of just was a good way to ease me out of baseball. Like I have not, there's only been a handful of times since I stopped playing that I was like, man, I wish I could play again. And one of them was whenever we went up to O'Brate Stadium, OSU's new baseball stadium, for the first time. And I've got my wife and my two kids, and they're showing us around, and it's just like, oh my goodness, this place is beautiful. And we literally stepped out of the like, I'm like, hey, this is beautiful, everything. We stepped out of the dugout onto the warning track, and I was just like, what I would freaking give to be able to play here again. Like, and so I looked at the lady and told her that. I was like, I don't want to play baseball again. I want to play here again. I don't want to go back and play pro ball. I would play here for 30 years if I could. And so that, just the way everything worked, it kind of took the desire out of it for me. I knew just kind of where my life was going, and I knew I needed more stability for us, so it didn't drag out my career. And that was a lot easier for me than maybe a lot of people. There's obviously some struggles there when it's like, I've worked so hard for all this my whole life, and somebody tells you you're not good enough, and then you don't get any more opportunities. Like, it's just over just because somebody says you're not good enough. And I think it's a lot easier to swallow whenever you maybe haven't had all that success, and whenever you have the faith to understand, I was working hard at a sport, but it wasn't to play in the big leagues. It was to prepare me for my life after what baseball is, and prepare me to be a husband and a father and all those things that as a 18, 14, 16, 18, 20-year-old kid, all your coaches are like, if you aren't worth a crap in baseball after this, it doesn't matter, but we're going to make you good men. And you're like, whatever, you're just making me run because you got into an argument with your wife last night. Like, you're not even, like, that doesn't even have anything to do with us. But ultimately, all those coaches have had a huge influence and did prepare me to be the man that I am today, and that I hope to better as I move throughout the rest of my life.
Yeah, and going back to coaches, what are some things you learned in your time under Coach Holiday? You've kind of touched on it a little bit, but also Coach Walton. What were the things you learned from them in your time playing underneath them and with them at Oklahoma State?
Man, Rob was just to keep it simple, like, it's black and white. I learned a lot about coaching from Rob. I spent a lot of time just watching him coach bullpens, just because I wanted to learn. Because I didn't know, like I said earlier, I didn't know what I didn't know, And so I wanted to learn not just about how to make myself better, but like, what's everybody else doing? What are you asking everybody else to do? Because I want to understand it better. I want to understand the game, and I want to understand coaching better. Uh, and I think one of the biggest things that I learned from Josh was uh, there was a moment I think I made a joke about being all in on baseball. It was one of those like, I'm just going to do baseball, and or I'm just going to do this or whatever, and whatever else happens happens. And I was like, I'm going to do everything all in on this, and if anything else works out, then cool. And Josh just stopped me and was like, no, that's not how you become successful. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, putting all my effort into something, how is that not? And he just said, diversify yourself. If you're good at if you put all your time into one thing, when that fails, what do you have? You have nothing else anywhere else. If you have 5 things, if you have that you put time into and you become good at them, it's better than having one thing that you're great at, that you're exceptional at. Because if you have those 5 things or even 2 or 3 things, if something goes wrong with one of them, you have those other 2 to hold you up. So whether that's your baseball in your school, or skills that you're developing out within each of those things, if you only focus on one thing in school, then if you can't find a job in that area, then you're going to struggle to find something, especially if it's very specialized. If you only focus on baseball, when baseball doesn't work out, what do you do? Where do you go? Because it stops for everyone at some point. So that was a big takeaway from Josh, and there was a lot of them. There's a lot of things I learned from those guys, but from Rob is just do it. Just do it. Mike, don't sit around and think. Don't sit around and try and figure out how and all this stuff. Like, just do it. And because I'm bad about that. I am an overthinker to the nth degree, and so I changed a lot being around both those guys, and for the better. Absolutely.
Yeah. One of the things is you transition out of baseball, get into coaching, you're now in firefighting, you have your own business, you train dogs and raise dogs. Like, so you're doing a lot of stuff, but I want to ask you a few questions. I want to get into this, but how do you handle pressure? What advice would you give to people on dealing with pressure? Because you dealt with a lot of pressure playing sports and obviously now in life. What's your thoughts on that?
It is completely controlled by yourself. Ultimately, nobody can really put pressure on you. People can do things and say things, but pressure is just something you feel on yourself. If I have 10 things I'm trying to do at once, I'm going to probably feel some pressure to get stuff done. But it's not, it doesn't come from, unless it is literally a physical pressure. Pressure comes from within, and potentially a lack of confidence, potentially overdoing things, trying to do too much at once, but a lack of planning. But dealing with that pressure, you have to prepare the best you can and have faith and trust in yourself that you're doing everything you can do. And I think that you nip it in the butt if you're prepared. So pressure isn't something that is necessarily that you can heal, but I think pressure is something more that you can cut off before it ever happens.
Yeah, that's great. One of the things too, you talked about your 2 kids and your wife. What has it meant for you to be a good husband and father?
Man, it is, and everybody's like, you won't understand it until you have your own, but you really can't. When you're responsible for teaching little kids how to think, it changes a lot of the things that you do. And to hear just simple stuff, my daughter to say, I can't do that. God, that eats me up, man. She didn't learn it. She learned that from us. Like, I can't do this. I can't do that. I don't have time. I can't do this, like, meaning I'm not able to. And I don't ever want her to think there's anything she can't do. To see their reactions to things, it's learned. Everything they do is going to be based on something that Delaney or I do, or someone who they look up to, mainly us, because we spend most time around them. So to be a good father, you're responsible for raising someone and essentially teaching them how to think, how to do everything. So there's a whole lot of responsibility there, and it's something I don't take lightly. Being a husband, nobody teaches you. See what a good husband looks like in your parents or your aunts and uncles or people you spend time with. You see what that looks like, but nobody really teaches you how. And for me, I didn't know how. I didn't know what that looked like. I don't know. I knew there's problems of, like, I'm not doing this right, or I'm not doing that right, or I'm not doing things aren't always done the right way. But sometimes you have to seek guidance. You have to seek a mentor. You have to go find a mentor or a close friend or someone who specializes in a counselor or something to help you, to help teach you and guide you in those ways. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. But I think as a man, opening up to say there's problems here is, you feel like you're letting somebody else in. But I just think you have to humble yourself again, to be better at whatever you're doing. And so to be a better husband is to be a better father. And so, again, I don't take that lightly. Like, that's other than my relationship with God, my relationship with Delaney is the most important relationship that I have. But at the same time, as anybody knows, those closest people to you are the easiest ones to hurt, and you take them for granted at times. And so that's something that or they're the people that bear the brunt of your frustrations or anger at times, but also they bear the brunt of your greatest joys and happiness. So to make sure that joy and happiness is more of what you're bringing home than anything, and that you create that in your home, I think that's something that means a lot to me. And I need to get a lot better at it. And I'm working at it and trying to do what I can. And but ultimately, like, to look at my kids and know that the things that they do are because of what they've learned from me. It is a huge wake up call for the way you talk, the way you act, the way you walk around, because they just do everything and say everything that you do and say. And you start to notice what might go on at other people's houses based on what their kids are doing. And I just want my kids and my wife to feel love and see love and in this house, and respect. And that's what exudes out of them, because that's what they see exuding out of me. So yeah, long-winded answer, but it's as serious topic as anything we've talked about today.
What are some ways that you push yourself to grow on a daily basis?
I spend a daily time with God, like I spend a quiet time. And there are times when I get busy or I don't wake up in time, and that doesn't happen. But that setting goals and ultimately just like keeping myself in check, and Delaney keeping me in check of, am I doing the right things? Am I am I really doing things towards what we want in our life together? Um, and I think surrounding myself with people who will hold me accountable, having great friends like you, like a handful of other people um, that would tell me, that would not hesitate to say, "Hey, you're being a jerk. Like the way you're doing the thing that you're doing is not right, or the way that you're handling this isn't right." And having other people around you that can lovingly tell you you're wrong, uh, as a leader in any setting, I think is what you need. So to better myself, I mean, in terms of personally uh, and spiritually, that's your answer. Physically, going and working out, because it's a whole lot easier to think about. I can go to the gym for 2 hours and work out, and I'm getting better. But it's a lot different whenever that's an emotional thing you need to work on, or a mental thing you need to work on. So spending that time and being receptive to those things from those people around you as well.
Absolutely. Well, real quick, we'll go into the fire round. So basically, I'll say a word, or you can finish in a sentence, or a word or two, whatever you feel like. So
Okay,
you can do anything
you can do anything uh, if you work, uh, which for me goes back to my day. Anything if you work, if you get after it, you can do whatever you want to do.
resilience,
Resilience is what's going to push you through. Uh, Resilience is what's going to make that work worth it. Because there's going to be struggles, and if you don't hit a rough patch, then you're probably not on the right path.
yeah. Favorite vacation spot.
My couch.
That's
I know you're the world traveler, man. If I get to hang out, and Delaney brought this to my attention, I was like, I don't want to go on all these vacations and go all these places. I just want to hang out at home. She's like, we went for years. She's like, we were always on the road playing and doing all this stuff. Like, and now I'm kind of getting to the point where like I could go for a vacation. It was like for 3 years we were literally always on the road. So
you're playing catch
yeah,
up on your sofa.
yeah.
So steady.
If you stay steady and when I think steady, I think consistent and smooth. So that's what I strive to be, is to be something that somebody can rely on, a person that people can rely on, and they know what they're getting every time they come to me, no matter what's going on with me.
Mhm. Favorite baseball experience.
That locker room in Stillwater, that that going to Mexico City, that was like the coolest thing I did. But as an experience, just being in Stillwater with those guys.
Yeah. It all comes down to.
It all comes down to just taking care of people. Um, I think if we're taking care of each other, then that's what the Lord calls us to do, is to take care of each other, to love on each other. Then we raise kids who take care of people, who love on each other, and we know there's plenty of a lack of that going around these days. Um, and if we can take care of each other, then we don't have to look for somebody else. We don't have to look outside of our relationships that we have. We don't have to look to. I don't have to wonder if something goes wrong, what's going to happen.
Hmm.
I know, because for me, I know that I've got you there. I know that I've got three of my other buddies that'll always be there. So just taking care of people.
Yeah. So we're done with the fire round. Is there a certain piece of best advice that you've ever received?
Keep it simple. Keep it simple. And I think it sounds so dumb, or so simple. I guess it doesn't sound dumb. It's pretty wise. Uh, but ultimately, just keeping it simple, doing everything the easiest way. Uh, Not necessarily the easiest way, but instead of trying to do 5 things at once, do one thing and get it done, and then do the next thing. Do one thing 5 times, and that's how you're successful. Because even though Josh said diversify yourself, you can't spread yourself too thin, because that's also how you can keep yourself from being successful. So, um, yeah, keep it simple.
Yeah. What about for someone who wants to, maybe someone who's young and wants to play professional baseball? What would be the best advice you give to a baseball player?
Just get to work, set that goal, and if and just and set the goal and set it in stone. And that doesn't set it for me. It was a level at a time. I wasn't trying to play in the big leagues when I was in junior college. When I was in junior college, I was trying to play in Division 1. When I was in, whenever I was in high school, I wanted to play in college, and I set it a step at a time. And even though that didn't always seem realistic, it didn't change, because I just decided be stubborn. That's where I wanted that, and that's what I was going to do. And people were telling me that that's not what would probably be the best thing. People were saying, you can go to this big school and not play. Okay, well, I did that for 1 year, and then the second year it panned out. And I'm sure there was people that doubted me during that first year. And that's fine, because it worked out for me. It's where I wanted to be, and I was happy doing it. So, yeah, set that goal a step at a time, and be stubborn. Don't let anybody. I guess that's back to the don't. Whatever somebody else says, it doesn't matter. You just focus on yourself and doing what you want to do.
Yeah. So this podcast is called Building Excellence. What does building excellence mean to you?
So I've heard you ask this to everybody, so obviously this one's coming, but when I think about it, it's excelling. So building excellence is excelling. And building is creating something. So building something where I can excel. I don't feel like, I think understanding that you're not going to feel like you get to the place where, hey, I built excellence. Understanding that it's a constant building, constant improvement, constant pushing yourself. So I don't know that I have a formal definition for you, but building excellence would just be a constant striving to better yourself, better the things around you, better the people around you, and just a constant striving for more or better.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Mike, one of the things that when I did the fire round, I put steady in there because when I think about you, I think of solid, steady. What you just described when you describe steady is exactly the person that you are. No matter what, I know that I can always go to you whenever I need something, or just in general. You're just constant, steady, and you kind of seen that in your career. You're steady, constant, consistent, resilient. You do the work, you put the time in. And I hope people can get out of this is when they do that, good things will happen. If you set goals and you don't move it, you kind of be stubborn towards those goals, like good things will happen. And so anyway, I hope people are inspired by your story, because it definitely is one that in some ways is a storybook ending, right? Or a storybook where you've had great success, but at the same time, baseball is not really your life. It's a part of your life, but being a good husband, a good father, being someone who owns different businesses and tries to be the best each and every day and excels. So you're a great example of building excellence each and every day. If someone was to want to reach out or follow you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I have Instagram, I've got Facebook, I do all that stuff. I'm not super active in it, but yeah, my Instagram is Mike the Freeman _. But yeah, so that's my Instagram, and then just Michael Freeman on Facebook. So yeah,
Awesome.
that's how you can get a hold of me. So
Yeah.
hey, I
Well,
just want to tell you, thanks for having me on, man. I'm really proud of you for this podcast is something we've talked about for a long time. And you stepping out and doing it, you're doing an incredible job. This is obviously being on here has nothing to do with me wanting to listen to it, but everything you've put out, man, it's been gold. There's been great takeaways for me from every one of these that you've put out so far, and just to be for you to be one of my best friends, and for you to be building excellence through your podcast called Building Excellence. I'm just really proud of you, and I just wish you continued success through all this. Can't wait to see how this continues to take off for you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Well, Mike, thanks so much. Thanks again for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.